But the main thing that I want to talk about, of course, is actually Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain, for the fourth consecutive week, has been involved in some incident that has something to do with his driving style, that has something to do with how aggressive he is with other drivers. And it's gotten to the point where, it's already been that point. We've already crossed that line where drivers are getting absolutely fed up with his driving style. Like, don't get me wrong. I love watching Ross Chastain race. I believe that watching Ross Chastain race is super entertaining. Sorry, I have a little bit of phlegm buildup. But there's always some sort of fine line where he says, I'm going to change, like, sorry guys for racing you way too hard. I shouldn't have driven the way that I did. But then the next week he goes on and he drives the exact same way. We had to deal with that last year. We had to deal with him, being kind of two-faced, where he apologizes for racing as hard as he did, and then the next week he turns around and he races the exact same way that he raced the weekend before. There's nothing, first of all, I want to say, there's nothing wrong. I don't see anything wrong with the driving style that Ross has if he were to tone it down a little bit. Like, yes, he has an enormous amount of talent. That he works and that allowed him to work so hard to get to where he is now over the course of the last 12 to 13 years. If you have kept up with the Ross Chastain story, he started in the top 3 touring series in 2011 with a small team. Then 2013, he was racing part-time for Brad Keselowski Racing. Then by the time he went over to the Xfinity Series, he was racing for Hattori Racing Enterprises. Yeah, did you know that they actually used to race in the Xfinity Series? For a little bit, went over to JD Motorsports in 2015. Stuck around there for a little while. Raced for Ganassi for a few starts. Actually won with them. That was his first ever win in one of the top 3 touring series. First win ever in one of those 3. Then he went to Colleague we'll backtrack a little bit. He went back down to the Truck Series to actually compete for the championship. Won a lot down there. And the thing is, we didn't really, over the years, there's just really to kind of bookend what I was saying there, because we know the history of Ross Chastain from then on. From all the way up to then, up to now, we never really addressed his driving style. Up until he got signed on to drive for Trackhouse, which was initially part of what was left at Chip Ganassi Racing. And then 2022 comes around. Everybody was talking about the driving ability of Ross Chastain and how aggressive that he was. How he raced almost everybody on track. Most notably, Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin. Those two in particular really come out, really pop up so much, like, those two come up so much, like, a lot in my head, as I'm thinking about this. This year, it has been, let me see if I can tally this correctly. Not just Denny Hamlin, but also Kyle Larson, Noah Gragson. There's probably more somewhere sprinkled around somewhere. I don't know exactly where. But Ross, fast forwarding to now, Ross, for the 4th week in a row, has been involved in some incident that has involved his driving style, the way he races. See, there's pros and now to dissect this. Yes, there are pros and there are cons to his driving style. The pros are, this is what makes Ross unique from everybody else. Sure, we complain a lot about Ross's driving style, but there are also times where, and I don't notice this now, of course, as much as we did back then, or really as I did back then, but some people have complained about Kyle Busch's driving ability and how aggressive he was, or of how Joey Logano, how he races aggressively and how he is, and how people have responded to his driving style, or Brad Keselowski and how aggressive he is. Like, this is not the first time that we have dealt with this kind of thing before, but this has popped up so much for Ross. And Ross has gotten the most amount of heat from this, more than I've heard from anybody else over the years of me being a fan, over the last 20 years plus of being a fan of this sport. I've never heard or even seen one driver get so much backlash because of their driving style, when there have been other drivers in the past that have gotten the same amount of backlash, but none heard to such a volume like this. This is, like, I'm not gonna defend Ross Chastain for, driving the way that he does, because this is what makes Ross unique from everybody else. His will, his fire, and his desire to win races and to win a championship. He came close last year. That was a championship where I feel he coulda, woulda, shoulda got it. But, of course, he just couldn't catch up to Logano in time. But anyways, I eventually digress. But I'm also a Penske fan, so really, what am I to say? Anyways, the pros are, this is what makes Ross unique. This is the type of style where you're willing to do anything to win. And the will to, just a little bit of bumping, a little bit of banging, a little bit of door slamming. There's nothing wrong with that. That is what we need more of in this sport. However, the cons are, the more you do that, the more enemies you make on the racetrack. I.e., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Noah Gragson, in some cases Kyle Busch, after the amount of times that he probably has had some run-ins with Ross. There's a list of people that that he has pissed off in the past. But fourth week in a row, man. Like this year, 4th week in a row that he has been involved in something that has had something to do with him. There are pros and cons to that, but on the flip side of the coin, I feel like if you are suddenly getting an entire pack of drivers pissed at you for your driving style, I feel like that should be a message saying, hey, a little bit of aggressive driving is okay, but I think you just need to tone it down a little bit so you're not wrecking other people in the process of driving aggressively. I feel like he just needs a little bit more control over that.